so welcome to, I have my mid-year benchmark data. Now what? We are going to make good use of your time. This is going to be a mini session, only about 30 minutes long total. And we are excited that you're here. We're going to keep this a little bit higher level. We'll talk about some ways that you can dig into and reflect on your mid-year data. But we're not going to go super specific into any one particular one, because as you can see, we do have quite a range here, which is what we had anticipated. There is a reflection guide that we've got to accompany this, so you can really dig into your data after this. And we're going to walk through some things that you can look at and really think about as you're going through that process. So I'm Heather Peltier. I am a teacher turned literacy coach turned curriculum supervisor who then crossed over to the assessment and data side, went really technical, became a psychometrician, district administrator supervising assessment, evaluation, and research, and then started working for the Tennessee Department of Education in the role of chief assessment officer. So I supervised all of the development and administration of state assessments for the state of Tennessee. So I'm very excited that you're here. And I'll tell you, Leah and I are a little bit unique because we're actually the only people I know that have those deep experiences on both sides of that divide. And so I'll let Leah share with you a little bit about her experience.
So I'm Leah Torres, and I came from a science math background. So I was also on alternative assessment or alternative certification. So if you do have alternative certs in your schools now, there is hope. It takes maybe a little bit longer because that's not what we went to school for, but I know that's really common now in schools, is that people are coming from all walks of life into teaching. And I was a science coach at the district level and then went into assessment, and now really work deeply with tying assessment and data back to curriculum with MTSS interventions and RTI interventions, and what's working and what's not working, and the difference between a student who has lost instruction, a student who is truly tier 2, and a student who is truly tier 3. And so a lot of that has been my focus over this last school year, especially with COVID and really all the rules changing in education. It was like you blinked and everything that used to work no longer is working. So there's been a really high learning curve, I feel like, in education right now. And so hopefully this is relevant to you in this new changing world.
Thank you. So here's the question that we're going to be centering around today, which is, how do I use mid-year benchmark data to best support student learning? And so there are kind of two aspects to this. So one is beginning with understanding your data, your reports, really diving into them and figuring out what they're telling you. But the other is tying directly into culture. So what needs to be in place for your teachers to take action and to take the right actions, the appropriate and targeted actions. So we're going to walk through those. So we'll talk through how to think about what you're seeing in your data, but we'll also talk through how that impacts culture. Because in the previous two sessions, we've been talking school culture, and this really is all linked together. So when you begin looking at your data, we recommend just take that high level view and look at what are your areas of concerns, thinking strategically. So what concerns are you seeing for your ELA or reading, for your math, for your science, depending on what assessment you have and what type of data you're getting? Are there things that are standing out for you as problematic or challenging? So this could be maybe you're seeing low growth. Maybe that's in a particular classroom or across a particular grade level. Maybe it's low scores or low proficiency. This could be by classroom or teacher. This could be by strand or skill. Maybe you're looking and saying, hey, we've got a problem in this one area. I think it looks to me like students across the board are really struggling over here. This could be by grade level. This is your starting point, and then you dig. So you take that higher level view and you say, okay, this is concerning me, kind of this. But then you start diving into it, because it's not just about, are they meeting proficiency, or are they showing the growth, but it's also about like what's reasonable given the context of that particular classroom, and knowing, as we do, that students are not distributed randomly across teachers' classes. You've sometimes got students of a particular type or learning ability clustered within a class. Leah.
And in some places, it might be a teacher, it might be that there's a vacancy. And so those are things to keep in mind as you're looking at your data. Was it a new teacher? Are they, did the student have a teacher? Is it a larger class? Is it a larger grade level? Or did the students miss some skill earlier on that is a barrier right now, and that strand skill? If the students were missing something in second grade and they needed to build on it for fourth grade, there are different progression charts depending on your state to help you key in on isolating. I see a lot of different vendors on the chat, and a lot of times it's not that they don't give you the data, it's that once you get the data, so this teacher is struggling. Now what do I do? Why is that teacher struggling? So part of the data digging is not just identifying the issue, but really where to move on.
Right. And it's not about holding everyone to low standards. It's about just not holding everyone to the same standard, understanding that context and taking that into consideration, because you're going to need to be strategic and you're going to address it differently if the students didn't have a assigned teacher for half the year than you would if it was a new teacher, or than you would if it was a veteran teacher and you see they've got a lot of English learners and they're just not showing the growth that they need to show. So all of these will be handled a little bit differently depending on the context and the situation. And so for this one, this is why this is session 3 of this series, because in session 1 and 2, we talk a lot about culture and support. Session 1, we talk about the school level culture and supports. Session 2, we talk more about teachers, how to support your teachers, what they might need to have in place. And so we really recommend using those reflection guides to look into your culture. What support systems do you have in place, or do you need to create, or do you need to amend to address the concerns that you've identified? So your first step is looking at your data, identifying those, and then thinking through what's in place. If it's not working, how do we need to change it? Maybe it's not in place at all and we need to add it. Leah.
And these can be different depending on the size of your school, depending on how many non-classroom instructional people you have on campus. If you're in a smaller school and you are a coach or a learning resource specialist that's supporting all of your teachers, there's going to be, you can't just go when you're looking at your NWEA math data and go to somebody else and ask about that coaching. In some of cases, we realize that it might all rely on you, and you are supporting a large amount of people. And so when you're thinking about support, what kind of support does your administrative give you? You should at least have a principal and possibly a guidance counselor on campus, but not even all schools have assistant principals. And so when we're talking about creating, it might be that you are creating a system with the guidance counselor because it's an attendance issue for a student. When you really go student by student and you start looking and you're like, okay, this student is struggling with the teacher, what support does the students need? And is it feasible for my school? And does the teacher need more support as well to address the concerns of these students who are struggling readers? They are farther behind readers. They are English language learners. Do we have even a paraprofessional to come in and help support this teacher? Or does a lot of it rely on you as a coach servicing all of the individuals? And is there anybody else on campus who can also with support. So when you're looking, and I know that can be overwhelming, when I think about some of our schools where they have one person supporting many different groups, what does that look like? And what's feasible and what's not feasible? And who do you address the concerns with? When you're thinking about this, do you think, okay, am I going to an administrator? Is the administrator then going to talk to this teacher? If you notice that a teacher is struggling, is it your responsibility to go and speak to that teacher, or is that a conversation between you and the administrator, and then the administrator speaks to that teacher? So there's a lot of different variables when you think about this. We talked earlier about, different things like the SEL of the student, or the life skills of the student, or the discipline of the student, or the attendance. Who is addressing those concerns with you as a coach or LRS?
Right. And we will also talk more at the end of this too about some options and opportunities for supports for you as a leader. So teacher data use / gap analysis and supports. So how will teachers use that data to identify gaps in understanding for reteaching and small group intervention? And how, as the coach or the administrator or whatever role you're in, how do you know that they are using that data? So how are you going to know that your teachers are actually using it? What structures and supports are in place? So for example, are you going to have coach-led data digs with the teachers where you guide them through it? Are you going to have planning sessions where they can work together and say, okay, here's what our data shows us. Here's what we're going to do instructionally, or maybe we're going to do some flexible grouping across classrooms because I'm really strong in this area and I think I can best serve these students. But really facilitating that, because what I've seen happen a lot is schools where the teachers are given their data. Here you go. I've printed this out for you. This is your report. And now you're going to take this and adjust your instruction. Just go to it. I know you're doing it. And I've been on district turnaround teams. We'll walk in the school and the administrator's like, absolutely, they are using their data. And when we look in the classroom instruction, what we see instructionally doesn't line up with what the data is telling us the students actually need. And that's because there was not sufficient guidance and support for teachers. Teachers aren't taught in education school how to do this. Even if they've got their education programs, there's a lot of data that shows that there's a deficit in this area in terms of teaching teachers how to do this. But as Leah said earlier, you've also got a lot of alternative certification teachers who have never had instruction on how to do this. So really that support piece is going to be very key for walking them through doing some modeling. How can they use this data?
And it really will depend. If you were talking to teachers who have been teaching for a while, sometimes using a reflection thought process, okay, what do you see in your data? Who do you see growing? Who do you not see growing? And letting them consider it. In some places where you have a newer teacher, if you would ask that question, they might not know how to even reflect on this Excel spreadsheet or this report from a vendor. I don't know what this means. I don't know what you mean by reteaching and small group interventions. That is something to consider for newer teachers when that was not likely how they went through the system. A lot of this is newer. And so maybe their teacher just in the past gave them an assessment and you got a grade and you went on, right? The whole idea of standards-based assessments and reteaching and reviewing may be very, very new to them. A review might be a review sheet that you give before a test. So knowing your teachers and knowing their level of understanding of the data and even the language we use in education can be really key to seeing that movement, because you could give them the data and they could be like, yeah, I have a fourth grade teacher and I taught fractions and none of them understand it. And I have to move on to geometric shapes. So sorry, you might have to learn fractions next year, and just keep plodding along because they don't understand the idea of reteaching and small group intervention. So it's really, as a coach, knowing the background of your teachers and having that conversation. Do you know what reteaching is? What do your small groups look like? And pulling that out of them so you have a level understanding. So because it would just cause frustration for newer teachers. If you're telling them to do something and they really want to do well and they just don't know what you're talking about, we've seen that especially recently with newer hires who are not from education, or younger teachers who just haven't been trained on that.
All right. So this really ties back to the school culture. And this is why we do recommend looking, especially at session 2, whose responsibility is it? Do the non-tested teachers see the relevance of the data that we're sharing with them? So are they understanding? You know, I've worked with schools where the philosophy was everyone is a teacher of reading, because it had really been drilled into them, brought home to the teachers. If the students can't read, they're not going to be able to do your science work. If the students can't read, they can't do your computer science work because they're not going to be able to read all the instructions and interpret them. So what does that culture look like? And what are some ways that teachers of these other subjects can reinforce learning in these gap areas? And then reflecting on what support systems do you need to put into place or amend for teachers of these other subjects to be able to help provide this reinforcement. If you can be strategic and say, hey, I see that this particular skill our students are lacking. Science teachers, is there a way that we can bolster this? Art teachers, is there something you can do to work on this? You know, how can we all come in and work together and support this? But that foundation of this type of discussion is having that culture of it's all inclusive, we're all in data-informed instruction. And then when you're looking at this, you need to look at growth and proficiency. So look at things like what grade levels or teams or teachers, depending on what level you're looking at, how granular you're going. Where are students showing the most growth? Where are you seeing students struggle the most? And where might you see them showing the least growth? And again, it's not about having lowering expectations, it's about differentiating expectations, right? So if you have English learners in this classroom, there are a large portion of them, you're going to look for maybe lower proficiency, at least initially, but higher growth. And if you have gifted learners, you might not see as much growth, but you definitely want to see those higher levels of proficiency or mastery there. So just having those differentiated expectations there as you're looking at this with your teachers. And then when you go to talk to your teachers about this, and this is important because I've seen some discussion around this on the Facebook groups for coaching. How are you coaching teachers through this? That this is where that culture piece is so important, because this needs to be a safe space for teachers to talk. And what happens is when you have that culture where teachers are used to looking at their data together, planning together, talking together about it, it depersonalizes, right? It's not like, oh, I'm showing you my scores and my kids did so bad, I must be a terrible teacher. It's not like that anymore. It's about, okay, we're looking at this together. I'm used to looking at this. This is not something new and painful. And I trust my peers because we've all had sufficient training and opportunities. We've been talking about this. So I know that they know I've got a bunch of English language learners in my class. And so maybe I'm not going to hit the same proficiency targets as, the teacher over here. But what I'm really shooting for is growth, because I want to help my kids close that gap and have that rapid language development. And so really it can help facilitate sometimes those discussions where if you have a teacher who is struggling in an area, if you've built up this culture of safety around discussion, it can shine a light on some of their teaching practices and maybe practices that are less effective. Like, hey, the data is showing me, maybe something needs to change here. This is not working. And it then becomes not about the teacher. It's not as personal. It's more just about, this is about the kids and what are we doing for them? Leah, do you want to add something to that piece?
We just pulled our data and we were looking at it, and we saw trends where we had students who had been proficient and now they are slipping back because of the overwhelming amount of students who aren't proficient and those getting the individualized attention. So when you're having those conversations and you're talking to teachers, it's really key that you make it safe, but help them learn to balance their instruction to meet multiple learners' needs. And so if they have a heterogeneous group, like a well-mixed group where they have some high students and some students who are struggling, how do they change their instruction or change their groups to help meet the needs of all of their students? And that's a hard conversation to have, and that's not easy currently if you're in a school with newer, younger teachers. That's where that second half of the training comes in, where we see this in your data. How does it tie back to instruction in your classroom? And so they might have a lot of, if they have a group of students who are really at different levels, they may see a lot of growth in their students who started out with more struggles, but have they also met the needs of those students who were already on grade level? And did we see any growth, or do we see slip back with them? So that's something else to think about if you have a younger group of teachers or newer group of teachers to education that might not be on their radar.
And then the last component of this is think about when you're digging into those specific, the skill level, the strand level, what specific skills or strands might teachers need additional training and support on? And who's going to provide that training and support on those targeted standards? And who needs to receive the support? Because maybe not all your teachers have the same struggles. And it might be that you are asking for support in some of these areas for some of your non-tested teachers of non-tested subject areas. And that's where it's really important that you make sure you're providing this. So for example, I used to work with social studies teachers doing a lot to help them reinforce writing to help out the kids in their language arts areas. And the social studies teachers were really willing to do this. They absolutely had the will. They were excited about it, but they weren't sure how to do it. And so that involved a lot of modeling on my part and planning with them and planning out the activities to make sure it tied into their curriculum, but also that it was effective writing instruction and that supported language arts. So thinking strategically about who's going to provide that training and support and who needs to receive that. Now we have developed, we actually have two resources for this one. So the first one is we've developed a reflection notebook with all of those questions so that you can use that as kind of your high level guide when you're looking into your data. You know, what are the supports necessary? Where am I seeing this? So it's got some questions that you can answer as you're looking at your specific data. And the other one, and let me just come out of here and I'll show you this. This is a Word document. And in the Word documents, templates for mid-year data digs. So we've got some directions that explain what each one is and how to customize it. And then we've also got some that are filled out. And we have two different examples. So here's at the grade and course level with two administrations, at beginning of year and middle of year. And here's a teacher level with two administrations. Now you might not have two, you might just have one. And so we have some directions in here for how to use this and customize this to help you get kind of that high level overview of your data. This can be really helpful for administrators, especially, and we talk a little bit in the directions about ways that you can customize this if you're looking at it from an administrator and you're thinking about school grade standpoint versus if you're thinking about it from a coaching or a teaching standpoint. So we cover each one of those. So that is, those are the instructions for that piece. And the next thing we want to talk about, and this is one that is just so near and dear to our hearts, is that bridge, becoming that bridge as the leader. You're the bridge for your teaching teams between curriculum instruction and assessment and data. And so we've talked a lot about support and training and opportunities for teachers. And so we wanted to talk about some supports, training, and opportunities for you. And these are two different ways that you can work with us. The membership is called Data Savvy Coaching. And the first way is a monthly membership site. And it is a resource. It's actually got several components. So the first one is a resource library. And in this resource library, let me move this so I can show you. In the resource library, we've got resources on a variety of topics that are really relevant to helping you lead data-informed instruction at your school site. And each one of these will vary a little bit depending on what the topic is. We have things like data walls, where there's an overview of how to use effectively, and then we have some options for templates. So how do you keep your data wall from just becoming a bulletin board? But then we've also got resources on things where, let's say, assessment development, well-aligned instruction and assessment. So how do you make sure those are lining up together? And those activities have background trainings, which are trainings for you to use to become the knowledgeable expert on that particular topic. And some of them have one background, some of them have more than one. They've got case studies. And then we also have take and use activities. So these are things designed to save you time in your role, because we've been in your role. And we've been through, we've been through coaching trainings, we've been through leadership courses, we've been through statistical analysis courses and assessment development courses. We've led assessment development, and we've taken from all of that the resources that we wish that we had when we were in your role. And we are just so excited to have these available for you. And that's why we make them time-saving and effective and impactful. Leah, I see you want to jump in.
Yes, and I would like, a lot has changed. If you've been in education from 1819 to now, it has been constantly changing. So as you're in your coaching role and you have this new level of responsibility, it's difficult to sometimes take things and modify it for this new time frame. PLCs and different research that had been done and is good and was solid changed and has to keep changing. And so really a lot of this is ways that you can take learning that you did possibly when you started and really get in front of it now, instead of you having to rework something because you have new teachers. 27% of your staff has changed, and now you have all these new teachers. And how do I train them all quickly? And what are their specific needs? And how do I get everybody on board quickly in this new changing environment? So a lot of this is stemmed from this need of things changing, new teachers coming in, there being a teacher shortage, COVID slide, COVID slip back, and trying to get in front of it as you are now responsible for helping and supporting teachers without spending hours upon hours doing this, because nobody really has extra time in education. And if we do have extra time, we would like to be working with students and with teachers instead of developing a template. And so a lot of what we have in it are things to help speed along the process of getting everybody trained quickly.
And these are things like presentations. We've got handouts and activities designed for you to use with your staff with minimal modifications. And we also have bi-weekly live training sessions. So those are similar to these, except with a very important difference, which is, I said at the beginning, this was going to be higher level because we have people from so many different situations here in terms of the type of data you're getting. With the live bi-weekly trainings, we have group coaching always following the training, which means you have your short mini trainings. They're, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the topic. And then there's group coaching where you get the chance to come in and talk to us, say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm seeing in my data. Here's what my staff is doing. What do you think? Let's talk it through. And so you really get that true group coaching experience, which I think is something that has been lacking for so many educational leaders, for coaches, for administrators. You don't always have those coaching opportunities. It can be a very isolating position. Again, this is the type of support that we wanted when we were in this role. So we're just so excited about it.
Yeah. And really, if you're in a smaller environment and you don't have district level support, or you're trying to coach and teach at the same time, it really is a time-saving way that you can get support as you need it.
Yes. And then it also includes bi-weekly. We have live sessions for fellowship and community where you can come in and talk to other data-informed leaders about, what's going on at your site. People who are participating, the members are at completely different stages sometimes in this continuum. And so getting to hear from someone who's been in your shoes and has moved forward, what have they done? How did they get there? And we also have it's called the Data Dojo. It's like a Facebook group, but it's a closed community for members only. For the membership, there are 2 ways that you can work with us. So we have a monthly option. We also have an annual option. And we also have the option for purchase orders. If that's something that works best for you, we can create that. So you'll always see that down at the bottom. And that's the Data Savvy Coaching membership opportunity. The next way to work with us is really limited in number, because it's a one-on-one coaching and mentoring experience. So you have access to all the resource library, the bi-weekly training, but you also have access to one-on-one coaching and mentoring with Data Savvy mentorship. So that includes 2 hours of one-on-one coaching and mentoring every single month for you. And that one also has a monthly or an annual or a purchase order option for that as well. So we would just love to have the chance to have you come in and work with us, because I know as educators, we all came into this field because we're servants. We love to serve. And for us, this is how we serve. Like, we have been to so many trainings where we have people who are either extremely technical and they've never been in a classroom and they're not sure how to cross over from the assessment and data side to the curriculum and instruction to make what they're telling us actionable. And then we've been to trainings where there are facilitators who are really good on curriculum and instruction, but they lack the technical expertise. They've never had that experience as psychometricians, assessment developers. They don't fully understand assessment in a way that you really need to in order to create this true data-informed instruction and to bridge that gap between those two. And so Leah and I we're really unique in this sense, and we're so excited that we found each other. We were actually working on a math science grant together, and we became close friends. And since then, have worked together. We've led projects, or we've trained hundreds of teachers across the state on the process of assessment development and looking through their standards. So we've had these experiences, really practical and applied. But we've worked in all of these roles, and we take from all of this and bring this to providing support and training for you. Leah, did you want to add anything about? You're muted. I saw you wanted to talk, but you're muted.
Just that we're really excited about the opportunity to work with everybody, and we're hopeful that you'll find quality in this work, and that it's something to be encouraging to you. We're really excited taking this to places where possibly there isn't a lot of support, and working with those who don't have a large district or don't have a large school, or even trying to teach part-time. You might have classes part of the day, and how does that look, and how do you get everything done, and to help manage really that time and make it time saving for everybody.
Or were you just dropped into this role without much preparation? And so, so we know that there are just so many different situations out there. So we're excited about that. So this is how you can have the opportunity to work with us. And we would love for you to join us. The membership is closing on January 23rd, which is Monday. We always close the doors after we've welcomed in our new members, because then we really work closely with them and build out our training and resources and supports for the members in the group. And that's part of how we ensure that it really is customized and meeting your needs as one of the members. So we would love to have you if you feel that this is the right fit for you, and if you're in need of this type of support. And we can stay on to answer any questions or to talk with anyone if you would like to know any more about these opportunities. So we'll hang out and talk with you, but everyone else, have a great day. But you're welcome to stay if you want to stay and chat.